Okay, so thanks everyone for coming to our, I'm going to stand up for 1 second, I'm going to be out of the picture for 1 second, for coming to our panel today. And we have with us, and we are very grateful that we have 4 alumni who were so nice to come back and speak with everyone here today and be recorded. And talk to us about the kind of work that they're doing, building on their degrees, and also the kinds of things that they might recommend that you think about as you're completing your work, and the kinds of experiences that were most helpful in helping them to get the positions that they now have and are evolving into. And so what I'll let everyone do maybe is take a few minutes to introduce themselves, tell us where you currently work, when you graduated, and maybe a little bit about what you do, and then we'll kind of go to questions. Okay? All right, so we'll start with you, Mark.
All right, my name is Mark Mazzoni. I graduated about 4 years ago. Can't believe it's been that long.
I know.
I work in the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. It's quite a drive, as I talked with Dr. Atkins earlier. And I've been there for about 14 months now, and I do governance and processes, basically handle the way everything's done for IT project management. And where I work for NIH, it's called NIH Business Systems, which is the software that governs all of NIH across the world. And the National Institutes of Health is the largest medical research organization on the planet. So I'm very fortunate to be. I'm a federal contractor, but working and supporting the federal government in that capacity it's pretty intense. But we do, I can say we do work that matters ultimately. I mean, luckily lives aren't in my hand, but it's pretty amazing work. And a lot of my background actually with the technical writing comes from the military, which I still currently serve. Done 2 Iraq tours. Don't recommend it.
Just in case you were wondering.
If you can find a different way to finance your education, which you guys are here, so. But it afforded me the opportunities to do what I do now. But on top of that, with Dr. Riley, Dr. Atkins, and several other professors, I mean, they helped build the foundation, and I just expanded on that.
Great.
I guess we'll get to the suggestions.
Yeah, we'll get to specifics.
Hi, I'm Brianne Wright. I am the grant writer and coordinator for the Children's Museum of Wilmington, which is downtown nonprofit. I basically oversee all grants through the entire life cycle. So I do the research, the writing, the budgeting. Sometimes I'll do some PR for it. I graduated here from UNCW with a bachelor's in English and professional writing certificate, and I started as an intern. So I guess my suggestion would be to always get an internship because it's definitely worth it.
What year did you graduate?
Oh, I graduated last year.
Right.
Yeah.
So, pretty new.
Yeah.
My name's Abby Watson. I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina, working at SAS Software, which is like the largest analytical software company in the world. I graduated from here in 2013, and I worked as a technical writer for a different software company for 3 years, and then I transitioned to be a technical communicator now at SAS, which is a little bit different from technical writing. So we're responsible for project documentation, which is what you're getting as a customer of our software, how your system's architected versus actually documenting the software and how it works. So a little bit of a distinction there.
Hey, I'm Chelsea Blayhut. I also graduated in 2013. I currently work at a business-to-business media publishing firm in Washington, D.C. It's called Hanley Wood, and I work specifically in the editorial group. It's all-encompassing. It also does advertising and marketing and trade shows for the housing industry, but specifically I write for their architectural and design publications. And so digital content producer, it's kind of like a vague and all-encompassing title. So I get to write and edit daily, weekly, and bi-weekly newsletters. I do a ton of social media. I write original articles, also curated content, and then print publications as well, so feature-length stuff. I think that's about it. Yeah.
Great. So, and we can kind of take turns. In what way did you see kind of what you learned in your degree kind of helping you to do the kind of work that you're doing now, or not?
So for me, and it started with even with a couple of your classes, and those were, I enjoyed those when we were talking. The document design class was one of them, but those classes really kind of set, with what I do, those really set the foundation, because everything we do is so procedurally oriented, and if you can think in kind of like process-based steps, then you're a lot better off. And when you're planning how a document is designed, that's, I think, the most critical part. So, and you'll get your content from, whoever it is, whether it's your systems architect, if you're working with database administrators, programmers, whatever it is you're working for. But being able to package that content in a way that's easy to read, and most people don't understand what programmers write. So being that middle person and translating that into layman's terms makes it, is pretty critical. And knowing the editing component too. I don't, because it's been a while, my memory's pretty bad. But I know, I took Shirley Matthews' Theory and Practice of Editing class, and if you guys have not taken that class, take it.
It's a requirement, right?
Yeah, we now have two, and this happened after, we have two editing classes now. So the one I'm doing right now is technical editing, and then we also have the editing for journalistic publication, which is more like the theories and practice of editing. So some people take both. Some people take both of them and get a lot of editing, and especially if you want to do editing or you want to do publishing in any way, that might be a good idea. We also, some people do one or the other.
I wish we would have had both when I was.
Yeah, it was a different, we kind of broke them up because people have very different focus for the different kinds of editing that they do. So the kinds of documents that you're talking about writing, what do they, for the people in here, what could you describe a little bit about what they look like? Like, what is it exactly that you are working with?
I'd say, to put it simply, they're really just how-to guides, more or less. Right when I graduated, I worked for a local software company here, right off Water Street, engineering software solutions for about 2 years.
Right.
And that was, of course, what set me up for the job I have now. And I did like a little bit of tech support for Apple in between. So, the job market here in East North Carolina is tough, regardless of if you have a bachelor's or a master's degree. That's just the way it is. But those documents really are just kind of like the how-to guides. And for us, you're talking things like to mitigate risk, things. So we have like risk management, meeting management, a lot of just procedurally based things. And if you can write a how-to guide on anything, that's like half the battle right there.
Okay.
So
yeah, that helps, because I think people have trouble kind of envisioning, like, what would someone at NIH be in your kind of position be writing? Like, what would it look like?
Because I don't work directly with programmers, unlike which I did that here in Wilmington, which was great. And the other thing too is, if you learn additional software, I know a long time ago we used Dreamweaver in your class, but if you have, since we should have, at least I hope, access to the entire Creative Cloud here.
We do now, yes. And students, if you don't know you have it, you have it. You have access to Creative Cloud. You should download some of it and play with it.
Learn, because I can tell you, and we may have been getting this in the future of the discussion, but for my experience, I was told like Adobe Captivate is part of the technical communication suite. So if you want to be a technical writer, you need to know those programs. And digital training is really, really important, especially in government. And those jobs up there pay. But down here, my boss was basically like, okay, we use this, learn it. If you like software, it's super easy. But even then, I got to create an SOP, so more process documents on how to do that. So it's really, really easy stuff. But as long as you can think, okay, if I'm using a piece of equipment like an iPhone or a computer or whatever, you can translate that for the lay user. That's everything.
Okay.
For me, I've used a lot of the English classes I've taken in my career. Mostly, I did a persuasive writing class. I can't remember who it was with.
Argument?
I think something like that. Yes.
Okay.
And I did rhetorical theory with you.
It was very helpful.
Yeah. And technical editing as well, and those are all really crucial in grants. Since I do the entire grant itself, I have to do the editing and the writing, so I use them both. Yeah, it's.
And what is your, what does a grant look like? The kind of grant that you're submitting for, are there different kinds?
Yeah, there's all kinds of different kinds. It really just depends who you're applying for. There's corporate grants, there's government grants, there's state grants. There's all kinds of different foundations, private foundations. So sometimes I'll get a grant that's like 60 pages, and sometimes I'll get a grant that's like a 1-page narrative and a budget. So it really just depends who you're applying for. So it's very, very diverse. Every day it's a different one.
Great, thank you.
I'll kind of piggyback off of what you were talking about. Most of what I did in technical writing in my previous position was procedural based, how to use the software. And the first thing that I noticed when I walked into the job was people are terrible at writing. Most people are so terrible. So if you can master the language and the grammar and the syntax and put those rules onto paper, then you're golden. Because I took a document that was our user guide for anyone who's using our software, and it was like 720 pages of crap. Like, what? I mean, would you ever read that? No. No one even wants to read 5 pages. And so trimming that down and figuring out how to put sentences better and how to put the pieces of the entire document together better so that people could actually use it was probably the biggest piece of my job. And I was kind of terrified going in because I didn't know anything about the software that I was going to be writing about. And that was my biggest fear graduating, was like, how do I get a job and actually do well at it if I have no idea what this company does and how the software works? But you surprisingly learn it really well. And if you can show your employer that you can learn, which most of you straight out of school will be able to do really well, then you're set pretty well, because they're looking for people who can learn new skills well, quickly, and put them into practice and not be told 45 times a day how to do the same thing over and over again. So I wouldn't be scared to go into a company or an industry that you know nothing about, because I knew nothing about the software that I was writing for a couple years, and now the analytics, I'm still learning that. But you don't have to be a subject matter expert to be able to communicate well. Other people are subject matter experts. They give you the technical jargon and you make it into something that people can understand.
And what is the difference between you were a technical writer and now you're a technical communicator?
Yeah.
How are those different in terms of the kind of work you do?
Completely different. I used to write and edit day in and day out. I was the only technical writer at the software company, so every new feature that was released in the software, I documented, I edited what I wrote, and I published it out. And that's really what a technical writer does, is they take the software and they document how to install it, how to implement it, how to use it. And then as a technical communicator now, I work with specific clients and their projects. And so we have a suite of software. We have like hundreds of different software products at SAS. And each customer might get a different combination of software products. And so we work with them to actually tailor deliverables to what they're getting. And we don't rewrite the technical writing components and how to use the software, but we write, here's what your package is, here's what the architecture of your system looks like, here's the design, here's the project plan. We work a lot with project managers and just kind of being a part of the project process for each of our customers. And it's a lot less writing and a lot more editing now. And a lot more use of templates. So if you can learn Word really well and how to apply styles and how to use macros to populate things throughout Word, that's like 80% of our job is to do that and to keep things standardized.
Okay.
And there's a lot of government regulations too that require certain language, and so if we can just have that as part of our template that's already pre-populated, then we're not wasting time recreating content over and over and over again.
And it sounds like, that sounds like a little bit more creative in terms of
I think it's actually
interaction.
There's definitely more interaction. It's less dry than technical writing.
Right.
Technical writing is, I'm not gonna lie to you, it's super dry. It's enjoyable, it's just dry. And this is definitely more interactive with project managers and with customers, and we kind of can tailor things to what they need, and every customer is different, so every day on the job is different, which is nice.
Right. And you probably have to come up with some ideas and things like that about like what's going to be the best for particular customers.
Yeah, and one of the other things we do is we have all of our content is on a wiki. So our customers access the same website, but they see different content based on their project. And one of my most recent projects has been to kind of redesign the way our wiki looks for our users. So coming up with new homepage designs to help them do what they need to do more efficiently and in a more attractive and appealing way. So there's creative aspects there as well. There's a ton of different deliverables within the professional writing world.
Great, thank you.
Is that UI or UX design?
It's not really either. It'd be more UI.
Okay.
But there's no programming or anything behind, and I guess it's UX of the document itself, user experience versus user interface, and how they're going to interact and experience the entire package of what they're receiving.
Yeah.
A little bit of both.
Yeah, I interact with a lot of UX and UI designers, and that's a big aspect. Employers want to see that you're able to collaborate with people that know how to design documents and how to deliver information so you articulate it well and you can interact with it well digitally. Anyways, sorry.
Yeah.
Classes that helps me with my profession, definitely journalism classes because I write on a daily basis. The most I do is news stories, short, quick news stories. I've done some profiles, some Q&As, some feature length, not investigative, but that's, I think, a trend across the industry because, I mean, the sad truth is people don't have the resources for investigative journalism anymore. So just as a heads up if that's something you're interested in. So yeah, basic writing classes help me a lot. Also the technical classes, the senior seminar. Is it Data Lives or Data Lives? There's a play on words.
I was doing, yeah. it was Data Lives, but I wanted people to think about Data Lives at the same time, so yes.
Okay.
And I was having a good time.
Okay. It was a fun class. It was good, and it was very relevant for what I do, and we did a lot of analysis of social media. And that's big, so if you want to get a job in social media and you want to produce content through multiple outlets, you also want to be able to back up that your work is working for your audience. You want to be able to analyze it and say, you know, when I word something this way or when I tag hashtags a certain way, this is what our audience gravitates towards. So that was something that helped me. Also HTML, if you don't know it, teach yourself, just learn it. Yeah, it's invaluable.
Yeah, marketing especially too. HTML is everywhere. Even I didn't know Wiki or HTML, and I've learned both in the past 6 months. It's not really difficult, and it looks kind of ugly and scary, but once you use it a little bit, it's not difficult to pick up.
Yeah, just get a Code Academy account and teach yourself.
That's good. Yes, yeah. All those resources are available online, and you can do that on your own. And it's about playing. Right, it's really about playing with the software and with the code. And we're in editing, we'll look at a little bit of HTML at the end of the semester. I try to inspire people. And I try to encourage students also to think about, there's an IT minor that you can also take some of those classes in. So you can come over to this building every once in a while.
I did not do that. I would recommend
it's newish.
Okay.
Yeah, it's only in the last couple years.
Yeah,
and it's a good, and you only have to take, I think there's only one really high tech class that you have to take, and the other ones are really pretty kind of flexible.
Yeah.
But it's helpful, I think, to do that.
And also being younger, like being in a professional setting, older generations are going to assume you know how to do this stuff. It's just inevitable. They're going to come up to you and be like, this enhancement isn't showing up in my article, what did I do? And you just are like, well, I figured it out.
I'll be back in 10 minutes.
Yeah. So you might as well learn the skills here.
That's true, though, is, always having the confidence, right, that you can figure it out. Even if you don't know right now, right, you can figure it out eventually. You just got to go type into stuff in the Google, right, and you'll come up with some answers. So what do you guys each see as the most interesting or exciting part of your current jobs or the jobs that you've had before?
For jobs I've had before, is just the opportunity to learn. I mean, just as everyone said in the panel, just learning these additional skills that most people assume because you're an English major or anything close to it that you don't. They assume you don't know. But with the youth part, they assume because everyone loves technology, especially being that young, that you're going to know. So you're kind of, I won't say screwed, but the assumptions are there, so play into them. Being in school, you have the opportunity to learn so much. And now with the software, especially with the Creative Cloud, you can learn coding through Code Academy, but then take Dreamweaver, you have the design side and the code side, and you move back and forth. But there are also other tools like Adobe Muse. If you don't know how to code, you can still build sites. But learning everything that really can make you more marketable, I think, is the most critical thing. But in my job, between me loving software anyway, but also my boss saying, we use this, learn it. Okay, that's what if you're going to say no, you're probably going to be out of a job. But
you like that part.
What's that?
You like that part.
I love it.
Yeah, okay.
I absolutely love it. And also, even before I started, because I interviewed Tom Janicki, he's in this department, for an article, I think, for one of Shirley Matthews' classes. It was a journalism class. And because he knew my now former boss, that's how all that started, because they had an IT career for him. I'm like, I'm a writer. I can tell you programmers cannot write. Your average person can't write anyway, but programmers more so, they can't write. So being that, and you may go listen, yeah. And so being that middle person to translate all that can be challenging, but it makes you more valuable too. And once you learn what they do, I'm not saying go out and be a coding master, but understanding the basic tenets of everything they do makes you more valuable. And then later on, when you decide if you want to work for a different company, or maybe move into a different position where those skills are more, let's say more advanced skills are required, you're going to be set up for success. So for me, it's just the opportunity to learn, or more even being forced to learn those additional software programs. And now, we use SharePoint for, I hate it.
Yeah, we don't like it either here.
It's brutal. But on the bright side is the creative aspect is we can build the pages. We're doing a wiki, especially for like our newsletters. So that's the more creative part. Even we did a video. I'm part of the program management office, and we deal with a lot of project managers, both federal and civilian. But even our little holiday celebrations we do, because it's all about camaraderie and building the team and the family. And I took some video, and it turns out our director, the big boss, his boss was there too. And I was just like, I'm just going to record his remarks and include it in the newsletter, just do something different. And they blasted it on the email because my boss's boss, the big boss's boss, was there, and it was just kind of it was great, the circumstances. But doing a little bit of social media piece and just anything you can do to make yourself more marketable, do it, because it's you against everyone else. So if you can do your internships, or maybe even do some independent blogging or vlogging or whatever it's called now, everything you can do it, because the landscape is so competitive. It's you against everyone, and I mean, even now they're willing to pay people less who have master's degrees just to fill the position. So if you want to stay local, that's something to think about. But also, if you're willing to move, DC, I'm in Bethesda, so right down the road from you. Just do whatever you can, and just to learn and do more is I guess to sum it up the best way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that completely. Being a nonprofit, we have staff that comes and goes, and sometimes I'm thrown into I have to make a media advisory and consult the press about a grant that we were awarded. Sometimes I have to do marketing on the side. The thing about grant writing is it is really tedious, really hard, really time consuming, but when you get that check and you get to go to the educators and tell them, we're going to do this program and we're going to impact 1,000 kids and teach them STEM, science, technology, engineering, math principles, it's really very rewarding and really awesome feeling for me. But yes, absolutely soak up anything you can. If they want you to do something in a different department, just do it, because it's good. It's a way to build yourself as a professional. And yeah, I have to agree with that.
I don't want to just echo everybody, but learning is probably one of the most fun parts. I was afraid when I left school that it would just be 40 years of boredom, that was terrifying to me to think about. So it's nice when I could continue to learn new things every day. And then I would also kind of set challenges for myself, because if you're going into technical writing, it's actually kind of better to be the ignorant person going in who knows nothing about the software, because you can see the gaps because you have no idea how it works. And so when you're reading a procedure, you can say, well, I can't do step 4 because step 2 doesn't lead, or step 3 doesn't lead to step 4. There's something missing. I would challenge myself to step back as I got more knowledgeable of the software, and as I continue to learn, I would kind of have to take a second and be conscientious and step back and try to be a new learner again, which was fun because it's easy for your mind to fill in the gaps without you even realizing. And that's a lot with the programmers. What happens is they know it so well. I mean, they're writing it every day. And so they give you 3 steps when in actuality it's 15 to get it done. And their mind fills it all in because obviously you would know how to do those other 12 steps. So just being able to kind of remove yourself and forget everything that you've learned for a second to make sure that you're not making assumptions that your audience can't make. That's been fun.
So I got thrown into writing for a publication on architecture and design, which I do not have a formal education in whatsoever. I felt totally unqualified and incompetent starting out, which I wasn't. I mean, if you're able to articulate something, kind of what you were saying, if you can take subject matter and articulate it, don't sell yourself short like I did. But it was still difficult because I'm writing about architecture for architects. So it's very technical, and man, architects are real nitpicky. They'll call you out. So being exposed to a medium I didn't realize that I actually have a personal interest in was very gratifying. Being exposed to the community of architecture and design has also been amazing. I've met some world-renowned architects that are like celebrities, and it's been awesome. And
Which ones?
Bjarke Ingels.
Really?
Yeah.
My husband's an architect, so I hear of these things quite often. So yeah.
And he's so nice.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's been awesome, and I get to interview really smart and dedicated and passionate people about really cool projects. Like, what's the underground park in New York City in the Lower East Side? It's the Lower Lab.
Oh, yeah.
He's creating a functioning live, ecosystem underneath a main street in the Lower East Side of New York, and he engineered these lights to funnel down UV and UV rays underground. Like, that's great, right? So just as long as, again, you're willing to learn, you'll be okay. But also do something on the side. I started doing my own newsletter on the side just because I realized I wasn't fulfilling my personal interests as well, like, creativity, and like I like to write about feminism as well, and I don't really get to do that as much in my career. So if you have something on the side too, employers like to see that.
Oh, that's interesting. So they like to see that you're,
Absolutely.
kind of have a diverse. That's good.
They'll stalk you on Facebook and LinkedIn before they hire you to make sure you're also not crazy, but also that you do additional writing pieces.
So in other words, scrub your Facebook and LinkedIn profiles like ASAP.
Yeah. I also, that's been a little like a bit of a downfall of having my name out there with articles of creepers finding me. Definitely make your stuff private. People are weird. Yeah, that's all.
Well, and Chelsea won't brag on herself, but a principal of one of the main architecture firms in Wilmington, Charles Boney, saw one of her articles in the publications that she writes for, an architect, I think, and sent that article to the dean of the College of Arts and Sciences and said, look, you have this graduate of your program who writes these great articles. She does a wonderful job at it, so you've definitely impressed him and learned how to speak about these things in ways that architects find to be very interesting and useful for them. So that's awesome. And all of the things that you guys are saying indicate that it's the writing and the design skills that are fundamental, and the content can be gained. So, like they've said, don't be intimidated that, when I was in graduate school, for example, I wrote manuals about software products for a metering company. I knew nothing about electrical metering, and I had no idea what the software did, really. So, but I did it, one, because I needed the money, and two, like it was a good way to expand. So, you don't have to know the content. you can just jump in and figure it out as you're going along, as long as you can do the writing part.
Definitely.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
It's also, from what I can tell, a big part of it is your audience. Like who's reading what you're writing, what you're doing. And I would hope that our program also, in most every class that you take, there's some mention of audience, and that you have to pay attention to that. And I would think in particular, grant writing,
Yeah, absolutely.
There's different types of people who are trying to do different types of things. And what Abby was saying too about skipping these steps and stuff, because if you don't know anything about it, you're obviously also doing a bit of usability for them too.
Mm-hmm.
At the same
Absolutely.
time, and you're having to fill in these gaps, and it's easier for you to do it because you don't know what it is.
Yep.
And I get that, and I think that that's also part of understanding, your audience,
Yeah.
and the people who are going to use what you're putting together, and you're chipping in, like as a person who I'm going to do this usability for you,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And so I think that that's also not only the design skills and the writing skills and all the things that we do in our, not just in professional writing, but in our department, that writing is really important, especially from that audience standpoint, along with all the skills that you get.
Yeah, and just a tag team on that a little bit. At software companies, most of them tend to have an administrator guide and then a user guide. I didn't, I walked in and I was like, oh, what's the difference? Because I've only ever been a user of whatever I've purchased. I've never been an administrator of it. And so the audience plays a huge part there, because the average user is like me, never seen it before. If I say click this button or whatever, they don't know what button that, they have no context for what they're working with. And so actually going through step by step and being more specific is more important there. But the administrator is the power user who understands the system and knows how it works, and so they get annoyed with too much information because they know it, and so you kind of have to know the balance between the two and how to write something for someone who can fill in the gaps to give them enough. I really like this thing that I found online called the Goldilocks principle for writing, where you give them enough to do the job, but you don't give them too much to make them run away. So kind of finding that happy medium of giving them what they need without inundating them with too much information. But yeah, it all goes back to knowing the audience.
So all these positions that you've gotten, and some of you have had multiple positions so far over your careers, let's talk a little bit about how did you get these positions, because it's not like magic, right? So how do you find these jobs? How do you secure these jobs? What is the job search process, and what can you tell people about doing that?
For me, I kind of hinted when I got the software job here in Wilmington how that all came about, and your professional network, whether it's with a professor or other contacts, build it. Because that right there will be, because they know you, they trust you, that trust is going to be what gets you that job. It's great that you have the degree, but if they don't like you, and I've seen this where I work, you may have too at SAS, but I've heard, because there was virtually no privacy in the office, they were interviewing a programmer. The guy was a veteran, super experienced, really, really good guy, but because he didn't fit the culture of the company, they said no. So, that's critical. And even where I work, I got interviewed by 8 people. That was scary.
Wow.
I thought, maybe 1 or 2, okay, but the entire team had to bless off on me otherwise. And I was more than qualified to do the job, but they all liked me, so it worked out. But your professional network, expand on that, especially while you have the time while you're in school, because once you get out of it, you're going to be busy working. So that'll be less of a priority. But for my government job, it's kind of funny how it happened. I was doing tech support for Apple, absolutely miserable. Don't recommend it. But I love their stuff still. I was just applying for jobs up in the area, and I was telling Dr. Atkins this earlier, there's a gigantic market for technical writers up in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. So if that's something that you love and you want to make a lot of money, knock yourself out. The caveat to that though is some of these defense contractors require very high clearances, and this is where the network comes in. If you can find someone like a recruiter that you can reach out to, and they're willing to sponsor you, because those investigations, and me being a military member, my job in communications requires at least a secret clearance, which is kind of basic, but apparently over 1 million people in DC have top secret clearances, who would have thought. But those clearances are funny because the companies don't want to spend tens of thousands of dollars on background investigations only to find out in the middle you're not qualified, and they just wasted that money. So that's why they usually want to find people who just got out of the military, who've been in like intel jobs, but also have degrees, so it's usually like officers, which is a bit unfair, but that's neither here nor there. But I kind of apply randomly, and my job doesn't really require clearance. We don't deal with sensitive medical data. It's governance and processes. There's nothing, secret squirrel or anything. But I actually forgot. I was applying for so many jobs, I forgot that I applied for that one. And
See, you were active. You were
3 weeks later, they sent me an email, and everything worked in 3 weeks later. Then it was 3 days later. I had the phone interview. 3 hours after that, they called and said, we want to do the in-person. 3 days after that, so this was a Friday, on a Monday, I was in there, and then my boss, well, my now boss, she said before I left the building that I want 3 of your references, so that way let them know I'm calling tomorrow.
Wow.
And it moved, and then 3 weeks again after I got my badge, which apparently it's harder to get into the National Cancer Institute where they do the badges because it's attached to Johns Hopkins than it is to get in the Pentagon with a DoD ID card that I have. Who would have thought? But it is kind of random, but the biggest thing I'll say is focus on your professional network, because those connections are going to be what helps you get that job. Because anyone can apply randomly, but people want to go, like if I'm an employee at SAS and I'm like, hey, Jane or John, like they would be awesome part of this team. And sometimes randomly at UNCW, we our intern who actually works there full time now at ESS, I met her at the career fair, and I was one of the speakers, and she approached me and she said she wanted to be a technical writer. I kind of laughed because I'm like, who'd want to do that? But I liked her. She made a good first, and she was actually a dual major, IT and English.
Oh yeah.
So
That's
she was money.
priceless.
She's worth her weight in gold.
Yeah.
I'll say she's worth
That's
her weight in gold. I
priceless.
wish I could snatch her up to Bethesda with me, because she would be an amazing asset to the team. But my former boss is very lucky to have her still. But it all worked out. I said, to my boss, hey John, Tara would be, I think you should interview her. And believe it or not, I know in English, very rarely, and I could be wrong, but very rarely do we get paid internships.
It's rare. It happens every once in a while.
Not to mention internships that the pay is pretty significant. I mean, it was high. I'll just say that.
That's great.
So the paid internships are there. It's just a matter of who you can reach out to, and tech companies are more likely to pay you during an internship than like working for a newspaper or whatever. The internship experience is still valuable, but if you can get paid during the summer or whatever, and now, she's there full time. So, that led into a salary job. But just, staying on your professional network and then, reaching out and really working those connections, I think will take you really far. Having the experience is great, but the trust, the credibility by knowing someone is probably what's going to be the thing that gets you in the door.
Awesome.
Yeah, for me, I interned with the museum, and I have seen interns come and go. I've had 2 myself, and my suggestion is if you have an internship, take it really seriously and really work your butt off. I worked my butt off, and they hired me, so immediately. So definitely internships, but I also can agree with this. I just recently was hired by Encino to be their content specialist, and I had the same kind of deal. I got an email. They told me to come in. I was interviewed by 4 people. It was a 2-hour-long interview. Went back to work, and then I went in for another 2-hour interview with 4 more new people, and then I had a writing assignment that I had to do. I had to write a feature document, which I had never in my life done, but I just kind of figured it out, used my intuition, looked at examples on Google, and they liked it, and then called me up, said I need 3 references, called my references. I used your letter of support, which and then they hired me. So it's just don't let it. It was very. I don't know much about technology, honestly. I was a grant writer, but just face it head on the best you can, and do the best you can no matter what they ask you to do. Just try to do it, and it'll be rewarding.
And that's exciting. You're going to start something new.
Yep, I'm really excited. But I have to get Salesforce certified, and
oh wow,
it'll be a transition. But I'm eager, and so.
And Encino is a growing business in town, so it is one of the we don't have a lot of those types of employers in this area, but that is one of them, and a number of our graduates have either worked there for a short time or for a longer amount of time. Other job searching advice?
Yeah, I also got my first position out of an internship, but SAS was a bit different. SAS was one of 5 companies that I just kind of monitored in the RTP area. It's a world-renowned company, best places to work list every year since it was founded in 1976. Ridiculous benefits. It's a nice place to be, and so it's just on my watch list all the time. And so I found a position, decided to go for it. And one piece of advice I have to you is to spend time on your resume and your cover letter for each individual job, because I come across so many people who have a resume and a cover letter, and that's not how it works. You don't have a resume and a cover letter. You need to tailor it for every position that you're applying for. And at SAS is especially important that I tailor it because they use their statistical analysis software that they create to vet the applications that they receive, and then they spit out the most probable candidates for the position. And then from there, that's how you get looked at by HR, and you go through the actual person process. And so they're looking for keywords that they're using in the job description, and they're looking for, they want you to spend time. They don't want you to have a template resume that you've sent out to 15 companies, because if you're investing the time into applying for the job, then you'll invest in doing the job. And if they can tell that you're not invested in your application process, then they're probably going to assume that you're not going to be invested in the work if they were to hire you. So that's probably one of the biggest pieces of advice I could give you, is really pay attention to the words that they're using. And if they're using technical writer versus content curator versus specialist, whatever, use the words that they're using. Because the more of those that match with whatever program they're spitting your stuff through, the better chance you'll have to actually get a pair of eyes on it. And then the network thing is also huge. I didn't have anyone at SAS, and so I still don't really know how that happened. Stars were aligned for me that day, I guess. But now that I'm in SAS, people are reaching out to me and they're like, "Hey, is there anything? Can you refer me for this job?" And so SAS is also a company that very highly values the opinions of their employees, because their turnover rate is 3%, which the average in the tech industry is between 20 and 25% a year. So they appreciate their employees being long-term employees, and they assume that when their employees refer other people for positions that they will be similar in their dedication and their work ethic. So also a good thing to continue building that network and just keeping doors open. Don't burn any bridges. Everything is a potential opportunity, so don't treat something as a closed door. Leave it open. Even if it's just a crack, it could turn into something for you.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Work hard and stay humble. Experience was the biggest factor for me. If I didn't have as many writing samples as I did, I don't think I would have gotten this position, which is a little ironic. Like, you need experience to get the position, but you can't get experience unless you actually are given that job, right? So you kind of have to show initiative in your own way. Internships and then writing for the school publications were the biggest for me.
And you had multiple internships?
I had multiple internships.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. Yeah.
You have to have an internship to get another internship. That's how it goes these days. I don't know. You'll get there eventually. It happens, I swear. Experience, and then what you're saying, when you have an internship, show initiative. If you see a flaw in the workflow, or you see something that isn't working and people see that you want to fix it and make it better, I think that speaks volumes. So
yeah, and to kind of piggyback off that, even if you're doing an internship that you don't really like, you're at a place you don't really like, I would still definitely show initiative, still treat it seriously, because that can, like everyone's been saying, open doors to other people.
Yeah.
You'll still need that reference from your employer for the internship.
Yeah.
Oh, also, when I was going through the hiring process, I had a couple rounds, phone, 2 in-person interviews, and then I was also given a test, which also was on AP Style Guide. So it follows you, believe it.
Yes. Yeah. And you have to know what kind of style manual, right? We've been talking a lot in technical editing, like different organizations use different kinds of style manuals. We use the government printing office style manual because it's free. And so I don't have to have the students buy another book. But if you're in publishing, you're going to use AP, so it's going to depend on where you are.
Yeah.
Even within a company, sometimes there are different ones. Like within SAS, corporate communications versus marketing communications versus technical communications, technical writing. Each kind of use a different style guide, and a lot of them have their own corporate branded style guide that's based off of something. So if you know the basics and you can at least talk about style guide and style sheets and understanding those and show them that you can adopt whatever style guide they put in front of you, then you're good.
Or even writing your own. I wrote the style guide at my company for social media. Yeah.
Good for you.
Thanks.
Create product, and then to touch on that too, create products that they haven't thought about either.
Mm-hmm.
If there's nothing there, that's the perfect opportunity to take the initiative. Even for me, when I started at ESS, before I started working, it was because it was on a contract basis first for about 7 months. They were test driving for a very long time, and I had actually hit a frustration point, and I, luckily because I knew my boss through church first, I probably shouldn't have reached out the way I did, but it kind of forced him to put me on full time. It was like, either this changes or kind of I'm gone. Those are your only options. Thankfully, he kept me, but I don't recommend people getting crazy like that just for your own safety. But before I started the job, I did a proposal for, and I was surprised they didn't have it, and I guess I thought all software companies did. It was a training and support portal, so it housed all their documentation, all the training videos that they would have, because they ran 3 or 4 different software products, and having access through one portal essentially was going to be pretty critical, because we had clients all across the world, most of which were in the U.S., but China, Singapore, Netherlands, and England outside of the United States. So as far as translating all that stuff went, that had nothing to do with me. That happened after I left, but being able to pitch things like that and getting that yes is critical, because as long as they'd been around over 10 years, nobody thought of that, which is kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. But just being able to pitch that to your prospective employer, or even while you're working or during an internship, it's going to be, those things like that are really going to set you apart from anyone else.
I was just one other thing I forgot to mention, that it kind of goes along with what I was saying with being prepared and showing that you took time to apply. Research the company and come up with questions, both about the company and about the position, because 90% of my in-person interview with SAS was, it was more personality and cultural based as opposed to experience based, because they saw my resume and my application and they knew that I had the experience, so they don't really care to go over line by line your resume. But they do every single time open up time at the end for questions for you to ask them, and it looks really, really, really bad if you have nothing to say and nothing to ask. So whether it's something about what style guide do you use in your office or whatever, just come up with a list of 3 to 5 questions that you can ask them, and research the culture of the company before you go in, so that you know how to carry yourself and what they're expecting. If you're going into a bank versus a tech company, it's going to be an entirely different interaction. So just put in the time up front, and it'll be a lot better for you.
So what questions do you guys have for our panelists? Stevie?
I had one from the white sweater. I forgot your name. Sorry.
Brian.
So did you learn anything about grant writing when you were at school, or was it exclusively learned from your internship?
I took a hybrid grant writing class with Dr. Hellenbeck, but other than that, I had absolutely no training and no former knowledge. I jumped into it completely on my own with no help, no direction, and it was terrifying. But yeah, it was terrifying. But in hindsight, I learned so much from it. I had been on the job for about a month, and my executive director comes to me and says, "Here's a grant, it's due in 2 days, due to the county, New Hampshire County." And you just kind of have to just figure it out. But luckily, I had Dr. Hollenbeck as a resource. I came here, and she met with me and gave me some tips and guides. So definitely, use your professors. They're awesome to have. But that would be my suggestion.
Also, I'm not sure when we'll offer, but I think it's in the spring of next year.
Mm-hmm.
If you're interested in that kind of work, Sydney's also
You should
been in
take
that
it.
class.
It's an awesome class.
It is a fun class.
Yeah.
And
It's
yours
cool.
was the pilot, so
Yeah.
I took the real
we're
estate.
still getting better. Yeah.
The real class.
What was the class called? It's grant writing. It's English 308.
And remember we have that 3-year plan of all the classes that we're going to offer and what semester we're going to offer them. Look on there and you'll see when the next time that will come up.
When you were given that particular assignment, how much experience had you had
Maybe a couple of weeks.
with grant writing and all? Wow.
Couple weeks. I took your class, but other than that, I had nothing. So you'll learn. whatever you dive into, you will learn quickly.
Going off of that, it's also important to find a mentor, like once you're in the workplace, someone that can like guide you. I mean, you know, I have a direct boss. I don't know if I feel as though I'm being guided in the way I want to professionally, so I've just kind of glommed on to certain editors, and you just kind of make them your mentor. So there's something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely if you can. We're a staff of 4, so I didn't have anyone, but yes, definitely if you do. If you do, yes. Yeah.
And that might change where you're going to now. It's a much bigger organization.
It'll be good for me.
Other questions?
You said you had to test on AP style. Was that like updates to it, or was that like stuff that's kind of in place already? Like it won't change or ever change?
Oh, that's a good question.
Or do you?
I don't really remember the test because it was like 2.5 years ago. I do think it was pretty basic stuff. Some of the stuff I knew off the top of my head, which you'll find you just know, like certain abbreviations. I believe I had the book with me, so just the skill of knowing where to look is also valued. But that's funny that you asked that because there are certain like AP style things that I learned when I was in school, and now I'm here, you know, in the workplace, and it's been totally either thrown out or renewed because of the internet. So there are definitely some canons or rules that will be modified by the time you're in a professional setting, which is...
Because I know Miss Matt just shut it down. So.
Yeah, and that's okay.
I mean, it's not bad, but like, I know like I took it a year ago now, and I know like things have already changed since then. They have came out with a new copy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it would be the most recent, so it would apply to, you know, the work you would be doing, but yeah.
Styles never stay the same. That's one of the consistent things about them. Other questions?
For your resumes and stuff like that, did any of you utilize the Career Center over here at school, or learned that on your own?
I didn't. I reached out to some people I knew that had gotten, I mean, pretty significant paying jobs. I'm like, okay, well, how did you do this? And that, I mean, it helped because I luckily got the job. So that's how I did it.
I had a class, business writing, when I was here, and we spent a portion of time in that class working on resume and cover letter, and that was kind of my first crack at my resume, and from there I just kind of updated it. But that's another thing I'd recommend is like update it every semester with new things that you've done or work that you've produced, because it's easy to forget 6 months down the road everything that you've done, and it's a living document, so just keep it as up to date as you can, and don't use a template. Just don't use a template.
Please do not use a template.
But just don't use a template.
And I wanted to add one more thing to that too, as far as the resumes go and keeping it up to speed. When you're, and people just kind of do blanket things, and I think regardless if you use a template or not, highlight major accomplishments, because they're going to want to, the companies are going to want to see, okay, you were at this place, did you improve something, make something more efficient? So even where I am, we had a report we submitted every week to the main contractor, and it would take it used to take one person 2 days, but I since I was an InDesign guy, I never did the advanced stuff in Word, but now that's what the government loves, Word. They don't use stuff like InDesign, unfortunately. It's kind of sad. But we took, I was like, okay, well, we can do macros, we can automate a lot of this stuff, and what was 2 days is now under an hour.
Wow.
Just because, I mean, we pull from a tool in SharePoint, and so, I mean, when it's contracting, it's time and money. But highlighting this, okay, you improved the production time by 80%.
Yeah, quantify things.
Yep.
People like numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's just gonna be like everybody else's resume.
Yeah. If you can take your resume and exchange it with the person next to you,
Not gonna get the job.
yeah, something wrong with that.
Yeah.
It has to really be about you. Same with personal statements. If your personal statement is very not personal, because your friend could use it, then it's not a good personal statement. So it really needs to speak to what you've actually accomplished.
Can I ask something about that though? Because for me, it was just summary, education, experience, and then skills and expertise. There was no, I mean, is that still?
I've heard not to.
That's, for
Yeah.
me, it was
In
no
my
personal
industry,
statement whatsoever.
Yeah, it's the same in the tech industry. They tend to just kind of gloss over that, and it's takes up a couple lines of your, if you're trying to keep it to one page as you should when you're first getting out of
Right.
school. Just, you know, if you don't have much to put on your resume, maybe it's a good filler to make it look a little bit longer, but once you start gaining experience, you gotta cut somewhere. So that should be the first thing you cut. Don't cut your accomplishments or your school or whatever. Cut the statement. Because most people's like, I'm a hardworking person with a degree who wants to optimize efficiencies and improve business operations. Like, okay, what does that mean?
Everybody else.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So,
That whole career objective thing is no longer
yes.
mostly put on the resume. But if you're writing a cover letter or a personal statement to
Yes.
apply to graduate school, you want to make sure that that's not something that somebody else could use. You want to make sure it's something only you could use. Because I read applications for graduate school where they say everyone says the same thing, and you're like,
I mean, but all of you are reinforcing what Abby said earlier, and that is you have got to tailor the cover letter and the resume to the specific job. Unfortunately, a resume and a cover letter, you can't just say, here's one for you. You have to look at the job advertisement, tailor it to it. I think that's again what you're sort of reiterating.
Mm-hmm.
It's a necessary evil to put all that work into it, because eventually you're going to land that job that you really want, and you're going to, because you took that extra time, you'll get it.
Any other questions? Yeah.
What writing samples did you submit with your resume? And what advice do you have for English majors who are interested in freelance journalism or want a job with a online or print
Right.
publication?
Okay, so the samples I submitted, I interned at Encore magazine. That was through Shirley Matthews through the internship program here. Prior to that internship, I wrote for the Seahawk, and I was also a writer. I was on the staff rather for Atlantis magazine, and I was a layout designer. So it was kind of a lot of it. But what I submitted was from Encore because that was the most recent. And I don't think I submitted anything from class, although I've seen that happen before. If they have written something for class and then were advised to submit it to another publication. One of the interns I had wrote a feature-length article for her class. They advised her to submit it to the Huffington Post, and it was published.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's what I used. Advice if you want to be in journalism. Experience is everything. You're going to write more than you thought you were capable of. I would say either get a fellowship or an internship from the get-go. The Atlantic has a really good fellowship program. It's a couple months. They pay pretty good, to the point where you can actually live in DC. The Huffington Post also has a fellowship, so I would say go. I don't know what your situation may be, but if you're staying local, definitely go for a local publication. If you can get to a major city, go for the major publications if you can do it. I would start first with a publishing job and then go from there with freelancing. Don't start out freelancing. You can't really, convince someone to hire you freelance if you don't know the industry or have work to back it up. But I know people who have made the transition. And I do freelance on the side a little bit, and you kind of have to have two jobs at the same time if you want to do that. It's tough, but yeah.
So the freelancing is sort of like what would be your hobby if you had time to have a hobby. Instead, it's your other job that you're taking up this hobby space that you would have had if you had time.
Basically, yeah. Basically, I know some other people who have done the same thing, but with graphic design. And it's just kind of what you do on the side. You do a bunch of projects on the side. Maybe you take some sick days, and then you make your exit. That's the reality. Yeah.
Kind of going off that, you said get an internship right out, summer after, right out of college would work better just to get your foot in the door.
Or during.
Or during.
I did mine during.
Yeah.
During.
I would, try to get paid as much as possible, coming out of college. I would, if you can avoid an internship and you can get a full-time job, absolutely do that. But if this is an internship, at the New York Times, weigh it.
Make it work.
Yeah. It depends what the company is like. If it's a better company, then I guess take the internship. So.
To get the experience and then maybe
Then possibly
go back
get
on the
hired.
job. Yeah.
Because people do that all the time where they hire you as an intern to kind of feel you out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, well, let's give them a hand. Thank you so much. Oh, do we have another one?
No, I was just.
We'll talk amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
But thank you so
Before you all
much.
go, yeah.
Oh, yes, we have.